Hope you had a good birthday though.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was really nice. There was
Good,
some new stuff, so yeah, it was good.
good.
Thank you. I'm feeling a little nauseous now though. Shouldn't have eaten all that cheesecake. No, no,
No,
no, no. I get this thing. It's like panic attacks, except it's nausea. So I call it nausea attacks. I just get very
I hate
nauseous.
that. I hate that. That sucks.
Yeah, I've been living with it. It'll get better. But there are more important things going on in the world than my nausea.
True.
Yeah. I did like two more interviews recently. Those are interesting. So the males are actually they're a lot different interviewing them than females, I noticed. The
Really.
Yeah, the males, they like change their mind more easily when like given certain facts. I noticed that. Unless they're like a very far leftist male, which is very rare, but there are some, then
Yeah.
that's very interesting to me. How are you feeling with we haven't talked in a few weeks, so how are you feeling with all the news and stuff on the Palestine front, or if you've done any like protests and stuff? How are you feeling about everything that's been going on recently?
I think that it's been more deaths every day. There is now, a case. I think it's the ICC against Israel that South Africa had made. Um, that was like a case against Israel because, basically saying that like they're committing genocide and they're wanting other countries to sign off on it. And now, Israel has entered Lebanon and continues to be there. So there's a lot more tensions now, globally, I think, compared to when we last spoke. Obviously, tensions were still really high, but there's been more like movements um on like a more violent front. But I also feel like it how I'm feeling, I've been speaking to more Palestinian people. Like I told you, I was back in the islands and
Puerto
I
Rico,
had,
right?
yeah, Puerto Rico, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had met some people. I had bought some scarves from this woman, and she was Palestinian. I went to go see if I could find some keffiyehs, and she spoke to me for a while. She was like this older woman, and she was so sweet, and she was just very surprised to see someone who doesn't follow like the Islamic religion to be like in the store. Because she was like, oh, like I don't really see that many people. And I had called to ask, like, hey, like, do you sell keffiyehs? And like, would it be okay? Like, I'm not Muslim. Is it okay if I come by? And she's like, of course, what? And she wanted to speak to me actually. And she had given me some pamphlets that she'd been giving out to people to educate them about like the Islamic like religion. She even gave me a Quran and I thought it was so sweet. I was like, thank you. And like we like embraced each other and spoke and to hear her speak gave me so much hope and like I don't know. I'm feeling okay. I
Do you
feel
feel
like
like it's the shared history of like oppression that's creating like some of that connection that's making you want to buy those scarves and everything? Like you could resonate with the pain. Is that what you think it is?
I feel like yeah, like I had spoken to her because she was like, "Where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, like I'm from Puerto Rico." Like, I can really sympathize with you. And she was like, "Oh, like I know about your island. Like, thank you." And like, um, I speak to a lot of Puerto Ricans too. Like, obviously, I think it was like honestly, I have just been buying keffiyehs because they're symbols of solidarity. And I had a lot of friends in New York who were like, "Oh, like if you find some, you can you bring some back for us?" So I did, and also like I support like smaller businesses, and that's kind of why I went to go buy the scarves. But I think that I really sympathize and like I could really empathize with her like feeling of like despair and like rage a little bit, but also like how hopeful she was made me feel more hope. But I do think it has to do with like our historical like context of our own like countries and how they overlap, and how much loss we've.
Actually, that's the other thing that I want to talk to you about. Uh, white colonialism, but not yet.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
it's something, I don't know if you could tell, I'm a little white. And
Yeah.
some people have called me a colonialist, so that's been very
Oh,
interesting.
really?
Yeah, well, white. I had a group of black kids who came up to me and said they're gonna slap the white privilege out of me. So I thought that was kind of funny. But that was like 2 years ago. That was interesting. Um, but that is something I'd like to discuss a little later. The despair and rage. So I'm thinking how to tackle this. Do I go into like the data, the facts, like how do we define genocide, things like that? This interview, I think, is going to be a little bit more. I'm going to be a little harsher with you, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. We're gonna test. You're gonna test me, and I'm gonna test you, kind of. We're gonna see what sticks. Um, I want to go into the emotions, the despair and the rage. A lot of anger comes from powerlessness. This overwhelming force that's happening to us, and we cannot do anything about it. And maybe there are a lot of times where maybe, especially in history, when we didn't have as much emotional intelligence, there were times where there was no solution except resistance. And I think that you've mentioned that before. I think that we're at a point where it's like in society where we don't need to go there yet. And I've noticed because I'm Jewish and like I follow this, there have been like a lot of people of Israel have been trying to do a lot of peace talks with Palestine for decades. And it's I there are two sides of it. One of them is like, okay, the Jews are there, let's create peace, and the other side is like, you came into our land. Why the hell would we want a two-state solution? So that's the two sides of it. And I think I asked you so there's that despair. Could we find and could we find that solution? How do we get out of that rage and despair? That's my question. What can we do? And if violence is the answer, we could go into that. If peace is the answer or discussion, we could go into that. Whatever you feel like we could go into, let's go into that. We want to find solutions.
I think that as a collective to get out of rage and despair, um, it's definitely not like an overnight thing. Like let's say that there are people who feel that, oh, after XYZ occurs, then the rage and the despair is gonna be gone. Um, I don't think that's how it works with violence.
It happened with the two men right before the last two interviews that I did. They had rage and despair. I just gave them like one or two data points and then it just disappeared. So it could
Right.
happen quickly, but it depends on where it's coming from. Is it coming from like misinformation or is it coming from like something deeper? Is it coming from childhood trauma? Is it coming from being raised to hate? Like a lot of the white supremacists in the United States, they've been raised to hate a certain way and they've been taught a lot of lies. Once we poke one hole into some of the lies that they've been taught, they're not racist anymore, like out of nowhere. So it's like, where is the rage coming from? Is it so it could be solved very easily, just depends where it comes from. In the case of the Palestinians, one of the data points that I gave to the guys was that in their schools, a lot of them go to Hamas schools, but even just the Palestinian Authority schools, they're given textbooks that say that the highest good that you could do is by murdering Jews.
Right. I remember you
So
speaking
yeah,
about that.
so when he heard that, it was like it changed certain perspectives. So if you're raised that way, it's going to be difficult to change that rage thing, but it's still possible. It's still
Yeah.
possible.
And yeah, and I agree with that, but I think that that is when rage exists because of hate. I think that for many black and brown people, like yes, there may be black and brown people who are like, yeah, I fucking hate anybody who is not like black and brown because you caused me suffering. Like there could be hatred there, but I feel like it has never been. I feel like it has never been um from hate. I think it's the despair and the sorrow and the rage comes from literally not being seen as equal or not respected or giving like the same thing, giving the same opportunities, the same life
I
chances.
thought you
And
said you're not a. I thought you said you're not a socialist.
I'm not a socialist.
Really?
I mean, I'm not a communist. I'm
Oh,
not a communist.
there. Well, okay, okay,
There's a difference. I'm not a, and I'm not saying that if people are given everything equal, this is just like an example, but
okay.
you know, black and brown people versus white people were not given equal opportunities in life because of
Are you sure?
um I definitely you don't think that there is
I'm
a
just. I'm just asking if you're sure. That's it. That's all I'm asking.
I'm not saying in everything, I'm just saying if you are born into a marginalized instinct, you're gonna have different life chances and you're going to be treated differently than if you were born into like a white, maybe like superpower like Russia
Yes, but wait.
or
Russia's not a superpower. Their alcohol consumption and trauma and the way they abuse each other is like nobody would want to live there. It's not a super. It's the most depressing thing I've ever. I'm Ukrainian. I'm telling you, it's the most depressing thing ever. The Russian.
word. So then I'll speak of what I know then like the states. Like, like if you're white and born into the states and you're born into like into capitalism and it benefits you, you're gonna have a very different
Who does
life.
capitalism benefit the most?
The people that started it. The capitalism then who invented it, like
Well, whoever
our
invented it. Well, one, capitalism is invented. It's a reality of life. Communism has been invented. Free market capitalism has never been invented. It's just a thing that happens.
it's
It's
a
just a
thing.
natural thing.
It's a thing. And I think that communism on the topic of that is something invented to counter it. Like it was something invented to be like, oh fuck that, like we're not gonna do that. This is the solution.
They saw the abuse that was happening like in late 1800s and stuff with the factory workers, and they're like, there has to be a better way. So it came from a really good place.
Yeah. And then yeah, true. Um, I definitely think that I'm just trying to think through these things because I don't want to say the wrong thing, but like I said,
No, no,
I
say the wrong thing. You got the mask on. Say the wrong thing,
relax,
please, please.
relax. Okay, I think so like I don't know if I told you, but I study public health and I study sociology, right? So those are my areas. I want to help the community. I want to help people, and because I study sociology, I study how people fucking work and like make and organize their lives. So I had to do like a couple courses about like the timeline of like political contexts and like different changes and like revolutions and like Marxism, for example, and the Industrial Revolution and like the different things that came up um, in America specifically over time. So that's why I say I'm not a communist. I feel like communism reflects a lot of Marxist ideas, and I'm not a Marx supporter. I
So
honestly,
then we could
frankly,
talk about the equal opportunities that you mentioned. You felt like different marginalized groups are not getting equal opportunities, and I asked if you were sure about that. Can I give you like a bit of my perspective on that? Then we could see where I'm wrong.
sure, yeah,
Okay. I noticed from the data that the people who benefit the most from capitalism in America are actually minorities. It's like Asian Americans, like like Pacific Asians, or like if you're from China, or Thailand or any of those countries. And if you're Indian, you make even more than them. And white Americans are like way below them. Um, and then you have blacks and Hispanics even lower than the whites. And the question is, why is it that Asians and Indians make more than whites? We could ignore why whites make more than the so from what I read, the reasoning why Asians make more than whites is the same reason why whites make more than Hispanics. But I could see why we see the whites in power in like political positions and stuff. I understand exactly why anybody who's like in a minority group would see that is just, whites are the capitalists, they make all the money, and like they don't care about anybody at the bottom. But because I see the entire spectrum, um, I see it like a little differently. And we have the data why that happens.
Yeah. And I don't question that data. I know that data to be true. Like I said, like I've studied health gaps, I've studied like wage gaps. I know this data to be true. And on a sociological perspective, which I'm glad that I can like bring in useful like material to speak about this. But so there's a sociological term that's called like it's something like the master minority or like the I'm gonna remember it later on and I'm gonna think about it, but it's something called it's like the ideal minority, right? And they have this displayed in the MoCA, the Museum of Chinese American, like uh it's just a museum that's in Chinatown. I went to that museum and they spoke about that. They spoke about like Asian Americans and other like maybe East Asians, South Asians that come into America and they do really well for themselves, right? And within the data that you bring, like they make more money in some cases or they're put in higher like levels, right? On a sociological perspective, that is literally like to show, and this is what like we've seen because in this display it speaks about like the allyship um of like Asian Americans in 2020 with during COVID and then with BLM in 2020 as well. And it was talking about we may be like the like deemed like better minority, but we stand with you. Like we are still
What do you
we will
mean
fight with
better
you.
minority?
So I'm gonna look up this concept, but it's basically a concept that says that like these different minority groups, yes, they're not white, like they are also people of color, but they come in like from China, for example, with a lot of like maybe knowledge or power that's different from America that helps them do really well here. And it's kind of like a social mobility. Like you get to America, you're not privileged because you're not like white, you're not privileged in that level, but you move up, you become able to surpass like the system
Do you
of
think
like
it's
where
a
you're
bad
supposed to
thing?
be.
Do you think it's a
No,
bad thing if they're
I
able to do
think
that?
it's a good I think it can be discussed. I think it's great that social mobility exists in that way. Like if we're all at the bottom, no one's gonna win. But it's kind of like this idea that was created that like, oh, like there are immigrants that are minorities that do good, that do well, that are not, you know, and this is just an instance, like they're not black, they're not Latino, but they're minorities and they've moved up in the social ladder and they're doing really great and they're helping us, they're contributing to America in a very good way. So they're getting money for it, more money than maybe even like white Americans.
Even like Nigerians, they come in here, I think they make even more than white Americans too, and they're
See,
black.
like that's something that like I don't know. I think it's like a means to encourage and push the fact that like you can benefit from our system too. You just need to do it in our way, you
Yes.
know? And so
And
that's sorry, go
and that
ahead.
system, the what I saw was that, and I'd like to know your thoughts about this. Um, I don't like the whole you just have to work harder thing, you just have to stop doing crime thing. Like it's just culture. I don't like that much. Because one, people feel like offended by it, and maybe it's not 100% true either. But one data point that I saw was Asians have higher rates of two-parent households than whites, and whites have higher rates of two-parent households than blacks and Hispanics. And what they see is that the more, the higher percentage of fathers in the home, the higher IQ and the higher emotional regulation, less amount of ADHD, and then that so they saw that if a black person grows up with a father, they make just as much as a white person who grows up with a father, or around the same, maybe like a little less, and there could be discrimination there. I don't argue that there's. I'm not somebody who says there's no such thing as discrimination. Um, but yeah, if a white person grows up without a father, they're just as poor as a black person who grows up without
I
a
mean,
father.
for sure. But I think if we think about it in like and I found it's called the model minority.
The model
So
minority.
it's it's a sociological phenomenon that refers to the stereotype of certain minority groups, specifically Asian Americans, as successful, well-adjusted, demonstrating that there's little or no need for social or economic assistance for the same or different minority groups. So, like I was saying, it's like to show like, oh, this is like a model case of a minority who like
The
made it
Jews
out of social
also didn't
mobility.
get any like social assistance from the UN or anything because they were refugees after um like multiple Holocaust. Israel barely got, well, they got military aid, but from the UN they didn't really get like the some of the aid that other people did, and it's because wherever they went, they were successful. But
Right.
I don't like that term, the model minority, because the black people who are successful, they're
Yeah,
successful for exactly the same reason that Asians are successful.
I agree. It's a
It's all the
very
same.
I think it's white. It was white person created. I wouldn't say that. I think that that's a really good like thing. I don't specifically agree with like how that's described or come up. I think it's kind of disrespectful to like the rest of minorities who have done really good things. It's weird to compare, but
What
it
do you
is
mean?
like I
Like
think
what's
it's
disrespectful?
I kind of think maybe it's a little disrespectful to compare like I think it's a little disrespectful, even though like it's kind of what happens to put a bunch of people as numbers and compare the numbers and be like, okay, like there's a higher amount of numbers of Asian Americans who are doing way better. So now they're gonna be like the model for
Well,
what other minorities
even if
should be doing.
let's say there are no Asians, no white people, nobody. Just let's say we could choose a Hispanic population or black. Let's go with the black population. Even if you don't consider anybody, there will still be more successful black people and less successful black people. And the ones who are going to be the most successful are going to be the same. They're going to be like, you take the 5% or the 10%, it's usually going to be for the same thing. And I'm not saying it to be disrespect. I understand. Like I've been studying. I have a I have a bachelor's in psychology, and I've been studying how to ease human suffering. And it's so painful for me when people suffer, and I understand when people come from poor socioeconomic points in their life. If they grow up with a mother who has to work three jobs, and there's no father to, one, regulate some of her stress or help with the bills, and then she has to do so much, and then maybe she meets a guy who's not good for her and not good for the kid that she's raised. Like I empathize with that fully, and I'm not going to be there saying they're bad people. I would not do that. I would not do that. The reason why I'm giving these data points is because I think social programs will be very important now, but if we want to think about the future, how we could help the people who are at the bottom, we need to, I feel like we need to understand these data points to see how we could change the future for the better. So the people at the bottom, maybe their kids could be privileged.
Right.
That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's always the hope. And I feel like I work in education in New York City in the Lower East Side. I work specifically with Black and Brown kids who are low income. And it's a very challenging, it's crazy to like be a teacher and be like, what the fuck? Like these kids' futures, this is their prime like time to learn and to develop. And like their circumstances are so unfair and there's only so much I can do. But what I can do, I hope would be good to help. And of course, everybody wants to social mobility. Everybody wants to out of the place that they came from if it's not a good place. They want to do better for themselves and for their kids. The system just, it kind of fails a lot of us in that way by not having that work out. Like sometimes it doesn't work out, you know? So there,
Yeah, but we could limit that. So we could limit. So
we
even if
could.
everybody does everything correctly, grow up with a father or like somebody who cares about them, and then they're high IQ, the system could like they could still get failed. They could still not have. They could still have very severe mental illness and things like that. But the reason why I like both. I like looking at the empathy aspect, but I also like the data. It's like how do we limit? How do we reduce the amount of suffering? And I think we
Mhm.
need to take a look at the numbers to do that. It might not be immediate, but it's like I don't know that I understand. Is there like, do you feel like I'm not empathetic to the people who are marginalized and um
No, I would not say that. Like, I wouldn't say anything specific about you that's like negative. Like I would say that you, if you maybe don't understand, like you try to, and I think that you, like you said it, you studied it. Like I feel that you understand and can try and empathize. So I wouldn't say that. I think numbers are important too. It helps us see. It gives us clarity. You know, it makes it easy.
do you think that some people would feel like some with some of these numbers, do you feel like they would be uncomfortable with them because they don't want to hurt anybody's like feelings with them?
Um, as far like what numbers are you speaking about specifically?
Mostly the two-parent household thing and how that increases IQ so then people become more successful.
I don't think that that is hurtful. I think it's important. Actually, I think it is on one end of things, I think it's important to like remind the kids like it's literally not your fault. Like it fucking sucks, but the system, it's just that's how it is. Like this is where you are, and this is where the numbers report to be. You can your circumstance can be different, but this is the situation. You know, I feel like why lie about it, you know? And I feel like those numbers are important. I wouldn't think it would hurt anybody. If anything, it would help people see, like, I'm here, I want to move up here. Like, how do I do that? Like, how can I do that if I want to, you know? So I wouldn't say that it's
If
not.
somebody is in that, like the kids that you worked with, I volunteered at a charter school and I did an after school program. Most of the kids were like black or Hispanic. Um, some of the experience that those kids had because of the system that we have, because they were not yet, well, it's going to be almost impossible for them to have the life, the privileged life, but not only that, they won't even be able to create it for their kids. Because if you grow up usually without a father, like you're gonna grow up without one, and if you're on the high end of disagreeableness and you grow up with a father and without a father and you have trauma, you're going to jail. And almost no amount of intervention. I think the data shows. I didn't see it, but Jordan Peterson said um, that if you're disagreeable and then at like 4 years old, if you're not socialized, you're done. You're in jail. You're finished. There's no intervention for it. So I think we could do both. I think we could find a way to help those kids that you're talking about. The programs that we have now are shit. They don't work. From because I was in that program, there's no way it's gonna work. And then we had to stop that pattern from happening. But I don't think it's the system itself. I think that in the 1960s and 70s, the Democrats decided to destroy the black community, and I think that they succeeded. That's what I think happened.
And what are you referencing?
So the two, after they got equal rights, not fully, obviously, the in some areas the black two-parent household was even higher than even the white two-parent household. Like it was like at 80% or 90% in some areas. And then in reverse, now it's only 30%. It went from like 80 to 90 to 30%. And that's after Lyndon Johnson said that he said something really racist. But he said, we're gonna have them voting Democrat for the rest of their lives. And it seems like they created a social um, the social welfare state to keep them poor instead of what the that's what it seems like. Maybe
So like
Republicans too, but it was created to keep them poor. They could have
well,
gone out of it.
yeah. So when you like, you're educated. Like when you hear that, you know, if you were to explain that simply to like a child or something who maybe doesn't understand all these definitions or like what these mean, like for me, and I this is just a curious question for me. This I just think like with what you said, okay, another white man um inducing hella power over people of color and
Yes.
not allowing there to be any change and continuing this discrimination, potential displacement, and like lack of growth. Like that's how I would say. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of good to know that that's what like that's just what I think, and it's frustrating because I feel that way with a lot of things that are happening. Like, for example, like if I were to bring it back to Israel and Palestine, like for me, when I hear it or I hear about it or I hear about, I'm sorry, I've never been able to pronounce the minister's name.
Netanyahu.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
I
guy,
don't,
yeah.
I don't want to fuck it up. Netanyahu.
Netanyahu, yeah.
Netanyahu. Okay, when I hear about Netanyahu, right, and how he like the actions he takes and like how he speaks to like other um countries and like ministers or people in power, I'm kind of just over here thinking like for me this seems like it looks like it feels like just another really powerful white individual who has complete control over the lives of these like marginalized people and he doesn't care what
Yes
he does
and
with it.
yes and no. Yes and no.
Tell me about the
Because
no.
yeah, because there were a lot of the Jews were becoming even more leftist, like in Israel. And they were actually protesting against some of what Netanyahu was doing because they feel like because he's more right wing. Um, and the reason why it was becoming more leftist was because there wasn't really a war for 2 years, and they thought that there was going to be peace with Gaza. And Hamas just sent the rockets over, destroying everything. And now the leftists are becoming more right wing. So it has nothing to do with him. He doesn't have that much power. It's like if he was so bad, if he was bad, he would have tried to genocide Gaza before any of the strikes, but he didn't for a reason because the people of Israel would not have agreed with that. They would have went all the way to the far left and they would have ousted him. The reason why he's in power is because the people of Israel don't feel safe, and they don't. And it's the email that I sent you, and they don't feel safe because the second they let their guard down, there's a terror
Because of
there's a terror
Hamas.
attack.
Because of Hamas.
Whatever, Hamas was replaced by another power that wants to destroy Israel, and they were replaced by another power. The Palestinians keep electing people who want to destroy Israel. But yes, because of Hamas, technically you are correct. And to me, that's a problem. Like again, if do you feel like things would have been a lot better if Hamas never sent the rockets? The reason I'm asking because some people say Israel deserved it. What do you think?
Well, so I guess I'm curious about your perspective because I've seen a lot recently that there's been a lot of people who I don't know, that there's a lot of misinformation, like hella, especially about like different events like October 7th or like the hostages that were released on both ends about what they had to say. But I've seen recently that there's a lot of cases against Israel about what happened in October 7th with the music festival specifically. Like there's a lot of Israelis that are like wanting to sue and like there are issues that have come up. Do you know about that?
You could tell me about one of the issues, but it's not going to change the fact that Hamas just went in and murdered
Right.
over 1,000
No,
people.
I'm asking because I don't really know why like there are people that are wanting to sue Israel for it.
Maybe security concerns because because there were a lot of intelligence that said that Hamas is planning to attack, but Hamas is planning to attack every single day. So they just didn't know exactly when. Maybe that was it. Is that what you're referring to, or something
Yeah,
else?
maybe that was it. Yeah.
It
But
doesn't change
as
the.
far
It doesn't. I'm
no, I
saying it doesn't change the fact that if Hamas didn't do that, there wouldn't be the bombings right now. And the thing that we could go into is like the genocide that Israel is doing,
yeah,
right?
I think that it definitely escalated what's happening now. The attack on October 7th. And like I said, I will not sit here and say I support Hamas. I do not. I condone any violence to any civilians that are like innocent. What I have grown to learn from Palestinian voices is that Hamas, in their perspective, is not like a group of people. It's like a it's like a belief system. It's like Zionism, for
It
example.
doesn't change anything. It's still a group of people. Like I know what you're saying. I understand. The same way they don't see the people who die as civilian. They consider them civilians or freedom fighters and not terrorists. Like
Yeah,
there's a way you could change things around. Israel doesn't feel safe. The more safe it feels, the less bombs are dropped. The more safe it feels, I mean, the more safe it feels, the less bombs that are dropped. If you make Israel feel unsafe by killing its civilians, they're going to do more harm. And the difference is, in my opinion, about the genocides is that Israel is targeting terrorists and killing civilians, whereas Hamas was targeting civilians. And every genocide in history was there was a target of civilians, every single genocide,
right.
except this one for some reason. And I also don't like that they don't give the data on how many terrorists are killed, only Palestinians. And it's done on purpose to make you get angry because I think they killed and arrested 10,000 members of Hamas. But you don't hear that. And that's a significant number.
Yeah, and I would say it's significant too. I guess my thing is that like with it's just a little frustrating, I think, to because I hear what you're saying and I agree. Like I think that these numbers should be out, they should be released. It doesn't take away from the fact that
They're
Hamas had
innocent and they're like there are a lot of innocent civilians who are dying. It doesn't take away from that. Yeah,
right,
go
of
ahead.
course. And so I just think my question right now is that the bombs are still dropping. Israel, I guess, with what you're saying, is still scared and afraid. But why are they dropping? It's almost like they're wanting to start something. Like they're dropping it not just in Gaza. Like it's been in the West Bank. There was no sign of Hamas in the West Bank. Now they're like
They have
speaking
the
with
peer, they're
people.
allowing people to walk in the West Bank to walk in the streets saying like chanting support for Hamas and October 7 and stuff. In Lebanon, they launched rockets from Lebanon into Israel. Um, there are good people, but we have to understand that these are people who want the Jews dead, and they're not. They had recordings of what they did on October 7th, and they told the world that they did it. They told the world they'll do it again, and people are still saying that October 7th didn't happen. So it's so and how would Israel like if you were Israeli, right? You wouldn't feel very safe if you put yourself into the collective consciousness of somebody who's Jewish and everybody in history has tried to kill you, and now they're doing it again, and now everybody's defending the Palestinians, even though they like. If you look at the numbers, I don't know if you have looked at the numbers of their support for Hamas. It's high. It's over 50. They support Hamas more than the Palestinian Authority because it's not radical enough, and
Right,
that's the people there. And if you have a group of people who are teaching their kids that and they have these thoughts turn into actions all the time. You can't have thoughts of killing somebody and then like not really do it, or you can't have so many people having these hatred thoughts. And how could Israel and Palestine create peace even though there's like that division? The severity of the bombings, it only happened because the entire world and the UN scrutinized Israel more than Iran, Iraq, North Korea, with the atrocities that they've been doing, they always pointed at Israel, and that's why they haven't like done massive strikes the way Syria has done or Saudi Arabia against Yemen. Um, and then there was this attack, and it's like, let's let it all out because they weren't able to. They kicked themselves out, and it's an unfortunate situation for the Palestinians to be in. But a lot of them are innocent, but a lot of them are really not. They're really
Well,
not innocent.
well, so with what you were saying with you know, how Hamas or how Israel has targeted, members, but it just happens to kill civilians. I
It's,
just,
yeah,
yeah, I just kind of am like, with what you're saying too about obviously there, I could totally empathize with the fact that there's fear, especially historically speaking. There's a lot of anti-Semitism going on in so many places. And with what's happening over there, with what you were saying in the West Bank, right? Yes, there's fear, but is that still justifiable?
no,
The
it's
fact
not.
that
It's not.
they're
It's not. It's not. It's not. I'm not saying it's justified. I'm saying that when any other country would have obliterated Gaza by now, Israel is the what is reserved has reserved itself for so long with what the Arab League tried to do with them, with how the way the Palestinians just like blew up their buses, for no reason, just killing civilians. Any other country, especially the United States, Turkey, Russia, what Russia did to Chechnya, like that's what they would do to Gaza. Every other country, whatever peaceful country you're thinking of, would do that. But nobody's talking about the atrocities that Muslims do to other Muslims, which are way worse than what is the what Egypt to the people of Gaza. It's the same thing. What Jordan did to the people to their Palestinian population, same thing. But people are only focused on Israel doing all of this. It's not good what they're doing. I'm not normalizing it by saying by any country would do it also. I'm not trying to normalize it. What I'm saying is we're not the Israelis. I'm not living in Israel. I don't know what it's like to have thousands of bombs being launched at you with the intention of overwhelming the Iron Dome so it could destroy hospitals and so it could destroy schools and kill kids. I don't know what that's like. Because I don't justify it, that's why I want a peaceful solution ASAP.
yeah,
And the only way for a peaceful solution is for both sides to do like what we're doing and talk. Like that's the only way. If we resist more, then we're just gonna get more of what's happening now. That's what I think. There was the ceasefire. There was the peace. We had peace. Israel and Palestine and Gaza, they had an understanding,
right.
but they continue to radicalize their kids and teach them to murder Jews. They continue to do it, and it's actually the UN denies it, but the department that's in charge of like the education and stuff in Palestine, um, they have I don't know if it's they know about the textbooks that teach those things. They know about it. They said
Right.
they have nothing to do with it, but the textbooks got there somehow. I don't know how. That's an issue, and there's no way for Israel, I think, I don't know if I agree with this or not, but I don't see how Israel could stop what they're doing until like that education is eradicated.
And I think that the thing is too, though, that there is never enough of a focus on the kids. And when we're speaking about education now, right? Like, yes, there's that side where, okay, like they're being taught hate, but then the Palestinian youth too is also living in fear. Like all you see from like diary scraps that journalists find and everything are these drawings that kids did in their schools of like them. I saw this one drawing. It was like just a drawing of a child hidden in a corner with an Israeli like soldier pointing a gun at them for just like being in the corner, and that's how a lot of kids feel. Like I feel like it's so unfortunate because they're taught hate, and then because they're scared, they actually do hate. They're like, okay, this is actually dangerous, like they're gonna hurt me, and that's scary, and that's how the kids
But
feel.
it's
But then,
scary for the Israelis too.
right, but I feel like it's way scarier for a young child than an Israeli soldier pointing a gun at
Yeah, but
them.
the Israeli kid, like I'm saying, the kids are growing up with fear too. But the kids, they don't cut off the breast of the Palestinian woman and throw it while they're raping them. So the Israelis, yes, they're killing people, but they don't do it with the savagery that the people of Hamas, the Hamas organization has has done it. Like I understand what you're saying. It's very difficult for the kids growing up there, but with that fear and hate, you're going to do things, and Israel will protect itself. Unfortunately, the only way to stop it is peace and understanding and dialogue. That's the only way.
Right. But so with what you were saying, like you don't think that anything Israel can stop what it's doing until this education is switched, but like in what regard? Like you don't think Israel can stop the violence on Palestinian civilians until they stop hating?
Well, I don't. The reason I don't like that question too much is because I just want people to say, why can't both people stop the violence? I'm okay with that. I don't like it when people say, like, shouldn't Israel just stop? When there was that ceasefire for 4 days, Gaza was still sending more rockets into. They said they're going to keep killing as many Jews as possible. So to continue to target Israel and say like they should stop, yeah, they've stopped, and then Gaza keeps sending rockets. So it's like it's telling Israel to okay, they stop, right? They stop today. Gaza sends more rockets, and you're like, okay, keep stopping Israel, and then they send more rockets. Hey, Israel, don't send anything. Just keep letting Gaza do what they're doing. Eventually, you're going to see actual genocide. You're going to see actual genocide where they're targeting civilians.
Like the
So
actual genocide that has killed 30,000 Palestinians thus so far. I just don't think that they can get to that point because they
we
don't
have
have
to
that
agree.
power.
We have to agree on. We could call it something else. We can't call what Israel is. I don't think it's fair that every single genocide in history has been when you target civilians, but Israel is not targeting civilians, and you can't.
But I feel like it is though, like the hospitals, the schools, the different regions. How
They're
is it
not
not?
tar. Are they targeting civilians there?
I mean, if you think about how many hospitals there are, how many people were in them, and the
Israel,
fact
okay.
that,
Israel bombed
well,
an
I mean,
ambulance. Israel bombed an ambulance. That is documented. How do you feel about that?
the Israel bombed an ambulance.
Yes, it was an ambulance.
What was
It,
the reason for the bombing of the ambulance? Because there was Hamas members inside of it.
yes.
Okay, and I can understand when they're accurate, right? Like I can understand when they target places and they're accurate, but about the entire case at Al-Shida Hospital, oh, Israel regrets what they did because they came to learn that there was never a base there. Why was it bombed
But
for
why don't you
so
care
much
then?
time?
But then why don't you care about if you hate this indiscriminate bombing of civilians so much, which I hate the bombing of civilians too. Um, I I don't know why you're not this critical of Saudi Arabia starving to death 400,000 people in Yemen. I just
I mean,
don't.
of course, but the thing is that that's not what we're speaking about, and I also
I
don't.
know, but
I'm
I know it's
not.
not what
I'm not
we're.
as educated as
But
I
why
like.
Israel? Why is everybody targeting just Israel? That's just interesting
I
to me.
wouldn't necessarily say that it's just a target towards Israel. I'm just saying that I feel so much suffering right now. And the people around me, this is what they're speaking about. And I care so much about community. And if my community is hurting because of this, of course, there's way
Yeah,
bigger
no, I
things to
understand,
talk about too.
but it doesn't.
I
I
feel like
just don't
maybe
know.
then there needs to be more conversation about what else is going on. Because you know, if
It
it takes learning about other countries and the
Nobody
atrocities that
cares.
they're
Nobody
doing.
cares about every other country because it's minorities killing minorities. And it's not white people
That's
killing
an interesting
Palestinians.
point. That's a really interesting point.
Nobody cares when whites kill whites or when minorities kill minorities is only and this is where the oppressor versus oppressed stuff comes in. Um,
Right.
but the Israel thing, okay, I know it's bad. It's bad. It's bad.
But like I
Solutions. I
would
want
like to
solutions. I want
know.
solutions.
I know. I would like to know, and maybe if I did know more, maybe if a lot of us like more radical people knew more about what was happening in other countries, then we could maybe see like come to a sort of understanding and maybe be more frustrated about other things. But the media, sadly, is what's educating so many of us right now, like the news, the media, other people, like uh teach-ins, discussion groups, like these are all things that I've been going to, and this is where I
Everybody in power is they're all Democrats, but not only Democrats, they're leftists, but not only leftists, but far leftists, not traditional leftists, and they all
right.
hate Israel because the same reason they hate the United States. And you know who else hates Israel and the United States? The Muslims. So that's why you see a lot of leftists aligning with people who murder gay people, and they're aligning with those instead of aligning with, the United States or Israel. I understand why you would not like both, but so they both the Muslims and the leftists they want to destroy America and Israel, and that's why you see in the media, which is controlled by the left, that's why you're seeing they're only focused on Israel.
Mm. Well, I mean, what do you think? Like, what do you feel towards America? Do you live in America? Do you live in New York?
Yes.
Okay. How do you feel about where we are right now as a country and like as a democracy, I guess?
I thought before 2020 was amazing, and then after it all went to shit with the higher inflation, all the money that we're spending on the two conflicts right now, the all the money that we're going to spend on the immigration, the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, it's all wasteful spending, and it's going to destroy all of us. Also, with the implementation of a CBDC, which could be happening soon with the Fed now, we're destroying the country and we're destroying what it meant to be free.
Right. And so what does that kind of like urge you to do like with this upcoming
Election.
year,
With the
like
election.
yeah, the election. Like
What I'm doing here. What I'm doing
what you're
here.
doing here. I guess the thing for me is I feel like, and this is I think a lot of what black and brown people will say is that there's like very little democracy in our perspective. Like I feel like we're not being heard and enough or at all, and no changes are being made for the people. It's all just like this political ploy, and like they're not hearing us and they're not doing, and even you agree, like they're sending so much money for these conflicts, like what the fuck, there's other shit going on, like
They don't care about so they're spending more. They spend like in New York like $10 billion on the illegal immigrants, and they could have spent that money on the black communities, but they don't care about them because right now the black communities are more in favor of Trump than before. And
mm-hmm.
so they're like, okay, you're in favor of Trump, so we're going to take all this money away from you, and then we're going to give it to the illegal immigrants once we allow them to become citizens, so then they could vote, which is why I believe the Democrats are fucking evil because they care about the blacks only if they vote for them, and that's what people have been complaining
I
about.
mean, it's corrupt as fuck, but doesn't that radicalize you? Like, doesn't that make you angry? Like, what the fuck? They're not listening to us or to me, or that
It
doesn't
makes
make you.
me it makes me angry, but I want to understand the person who would do something that evil. And that's I want to talk to more leftists but they don't want to talk. If I keep doing this, I think I'm going to find ways of getting in contact with people who have that mindset. And then so I could talk to them and say like, why are you doing this? Why don't you care about the marginalized group and things like that? How can we change that? Why are you afraid if they get more power? Things like that.
And so, I mean, your purpose of talking to me, like, do you see me as like a radical, like leftist, or like what is kind of like when you
I
speak,
want you
you know?
I don't feel, I think that you see the Palestinian perspective very well. And I could empathize with that. I would like for people to see the reality of both sides and why both sides are doing what, not to justify what Israel is doing, but to be like, okay, they, they have all these terrorist bombings and stuff, and the Palestinians are being taught to continue to destroy them. How do we create a peaceful situation without Israel doing what it's doing. That's with you. Like anybody who's pro-Palestine, I noticed they overlook a lot of the atrocities that the Palestinians have done. They don't look at it. And Israelis feel like that's dangerous.
Mm. Okay.
That's what
And
I'm trying to do with this.
okay.
Um, yeah.
So like what kind of atrocities do you feel like are overlooked by this side?
I think the intifadas, um, whether they were right or not, they worked. The intifadas worked to kick the Israelis out of Gaza, but the Israelis left because they thought that it would create peace. They had an agreement. We leave Gaza and you stop trying to kill us. And but
Give me
every single they worked to get the Jews out, but Gaza kept attacking Israel because it's not enough. There's the reason that there's the saying from the river to the sea because Gaza and Palestine they want all of Israel and rightfully so. But the more they try to take back Israel, the more Israel is going to fight back. The
right.
more civilians are going to die. So I guess I want people to see that no matter what the Israelis give back to the Palestinians, the bombings just don't stop and they never stop because the people of the Hamas organization said we're not going to stop.
Because it's not enough.
Well, it's not about the land. That's what everybody gets wrong. It has nothing to do with the land. It's just Muslims don't like anybody who's um, this happened in like the 1920s and even before when the Jews were coming into Palestine, and they don't want a majority that's not Muslim in their land because they actually don't have any. They don't. They don't have a lot of not tolerance. What's the word? But they don't like anybody who's not Muslim. That's where the infidel saying comes from. And so I think
But what
that's what I
about the Palestinian like Christian population?
so the Christian population, from what I read, they didn't target the Jews. It was only the Muslims. From what I read, I'm not sure. So there were Christian Palestinians, Jewish Palestinians, and Muslims, but only the Muslims had a problem with the Jews coming in, and then they
Okay.
started massacring them even before 1948, before 1930.
And so
Um,
do you feel like it's religiously based then
no,
you feel like
it's hate based, hating anybody who's not you or hating anybody who doesn't. Yeah, but it's not like they all do. Islam is a religion of peace.
exactly, yeah.
But it's actually but it's mostly but it's a religion of peace if you adhere to everything that you were told to
Yeah.
do, unfortunately. And when you go into the radical, when it's radicalized, it becomes even worse. So I think that's what I want people to understand that the Palestinians will continue to try to kill every single Jew that they can.
That's like I feel like that's a very like that's a statement that makes me uncomfortable and I hope that that wouldn't be true, you know? So I what makes you say that statement? Because when you tell me that, I'm like, what the fuck? This is not what I thought was gonna happen, you know what I mean? So what makes you say it? What makes you
Well,
say that?
do we know the data on how Egyptians feel about suicide bombing, for example? Do we have the data on like how American citizens or British citizens or British Muslim citizens feel about suicide bombings? And if you look at Pew Research, you you know you could not believe it or you could believe it. I believe a lot of the data because it shows not only what Palestinians think or what members of Hamas think, but what the West Bank thinks, what Gaza thinks, what everybody thinks, other Muslim
And so
nations.
what is like the consensus?
The same as the college universities, or
Really?
even worse, the college universities. Some universities are showing that 50% of the students, um, the timer went off. Um,
You said you wanted to do time and a half? Or
I would love to do that.
okay,
If
I
you're
mean
okay with it, yeah,
that's
yeah.
totally fine. You just let me know. I I'm good to keep
Yeah, okay.
going. I
Okay.
might just get up and get water really quick, if that's cool.
You want to do that? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
like a little break. Okay.
I was trying to find the numbers. I wouldn't be able to bring it up now, but I thought it was interesting just seeing how other countries feel about like okay. I saw somewhere that 50% of university students feel like October 7 was justified. And if that's at American universities, think about what it's like in Gaza, who's been bombed by Israel, or the West Bank. So over there, I think like 70 to 78% believe that suicide bombing, let's say 70% believe that suicide bombing is justified. Um, and
Justified as an act of resistance, or what do they say?
Justified, it was justified sometimes, or there are times where it's justified. So I
Okay.
guess let's say active resistance. Let's not say just to, yeah. Um, and it's less in Egypt and Jordan. So that's why I trust the numbers a little bit more. And I also saw that over 50% of Palestinians believe in that it's okay to kill Israeli civilians, and that's from a biased um, website that's pro-Palestine because they were
Interesting.
trying because they were trying to say like yeah but there's 50% of them actually don't believe that is justified to kill civilians, so like they try to play it that way, like look at all these people who don't, but
And
then
then you're like, but wait, what about, yeah.
the other 50, yeah, um they believe in just martyring their civilians. It's not all, obviously, but it, the interviews. So when I watch the interviews with Corey, he does both interviews of Israelis and Palestinians. When I watch that, and I watch a lot, um, it kind of correlates with some of the numbers that I see. Um,
Mm.
and the but when Israel had control of Gaza, when they were occupying it, they had more control over the education. But when they left, then they started becoming even more radicalized. It's
Right.
not, but I'm not supporting occupation, but it's just like there is a large percentage of them are very radical.
Well, I mean, how what do you think brings a place like Palestine to such radical like spots?
They never
I
industrialized. They never industrialized like the West. So it's still a more, yeah, that's it. It has nothing to do. They were at one point like the Muslims were at one point the most advanced colonizing force, like the Chinese were, and at one point Muslim expansionism was it far surpassed whatever the West or France or Britain ever did.
right,
So what did that is they had to adhere to their religion, and they have something called apostate. Like if you're an apostate, you if you want to leave your religion, the family disowns you, and in some of the countries they kill you if you don't want to become a Muslim anymore. And I think, say what you want about Christianity, I don't think they kill you for leaving the
I
faith.
mean, true.
Um, so that kind of radicalizes people, and it's like the need to feel loved by your community and your parents. And when the parents are like, "Hey, we'll love you if you support this religion," it kind of radicalizes you also because you can't be yourself. What if that's not
Yeah.
you? It takes away the individual aspect of you. And if you take the most disagreeable people, I think in Hamas, just my last point, then I'll get your thoughts. But I think in the group of Hamas, most of the people there also grew up without fathers. So it's like there are a lot of Palestinians who are taught this information, but they choose not to hate. But
Yeah.
specific people, like, they gravitate towards hate groups also. So you're given the information and then the hate group, and then they become just so dangerous to be around. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I with what you said, like on if there was like data on like whether or not these Hamas like members, with what you were saying in the beginning about like psycho psychological effects of like these like life chances of not having like a father, or, like being in a two-parent household, right? I think that it also probably depends on like the context too, because if we think about it, like over time, like this conflict has just been going on for so long, and like it's affected so many different like ages of people. And I remember when I was speaking to the Palestinian woman at the scarf shop, she had told me that um she was born like during the first Nakba, and that they had migrated to, or I guess immigrated, I don't know what the word would be, but to Lebanon, um because of what was happening, and like that her father just kind of like, it was just him, it was him and the her and her sisters just moved to Jordan. And then she ended up coming to America, but left her family. And she was saying that her sisters and now a sobrina, niece, is in the West Bank. um and just telling me about that, and I just, you know just thinking about like this woman's experience and her entire like life, she's seen so much of this. And speaking about it, and she very much was with like a lot of like love and peace. Like for me, she was just kind of saying like, um we want peace here in America. Like I'm learning that people want peace, like people don't want to hurt, but over there it's very different. Like there are people who want to hurt, like there are people who do want to do bad things. And I think the biggest thing she was trying to get across to me was that she was telling me, she's like, I promise we're not all terrorists. Like, I promise it's not what they say. Like, my family isn't a terrorist family. Like, my family wants peace. My family wants everyone to be safe. We just want to live. Like, we don't want to die. And, you know, having like an older woman like look at you and tell you, like, I promise, like, please tell people like I'm not a terrorist. Like, I promise I'm not bad. It is just like so like fuck, like humanity went really wrong somewhere, but then there's also like there are people who are terrorists and who won't be here and be like, I'm a terrorist, by the way. Like, they're not gonna do that. It's just a lot of tension and like a lot of really clashing thoughts, but for me, like the numbers and the data and the history is so important. um but honestly, right now, I think I just am very focused on the fact at like, okay, like how do people like survive this and overcome this, especially when we're not there? And like there's a lot of suffering right now, and like what do we do? Which is kind of your point, that like you don't want to see human suffering, you don't like it. What do we do? But then there's so many people who don't understand like the whole context of what's going on and like all these perspectives and things.
The pro-Israeli crowd, like when I talk to them, they understand. They don't. I've seen some clips of some pro-Israeli people just being like bomb all of them.
Yeah.
There are definitely all that. It's just when if you were to go out and like talk to like 10, 20, 30 um pro-Israel people, you will see that like 95% of them, they just want to not get continue to get attacked. They
Like,
don't want Israel to keep getting attacked.
but what about Zionism? Like, I feel like have you spoken to like pro-Zionist people? Because there are like pro-Israeli people who are not Zionists. What do you get from like the Zionist group of people?
That's why I like the Quarry interview so much, because I didn't know how extreme some of the Zionists were. Like some of the settlers, they were like, yeah, God said this is our land. And I'm like, that's not a fucking justification. Um,
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Yeah.
But most of the people that I know who are Zionists, they're like, we just want a land, right? the extreme people, they say Palestine should be our land, but it's not from a place of like, yeah, we were here 2,000 years ago and it's our rightful place. I don't think that's where it really comes from. I think it comes from like nobody else wants us. Everywhere else we're massacred, and like we need some kind of justification to have a land somewhere. And maybe they didn't think about India or China or somewhere in Asia, and they were just like, okay, we're gonna go there. But they didn't get the permission of the ruling majority, which were the Muslims, right? Well, they got it from Turkey allowed them to come in. Then the British kind of stopped them, and then they couldn't escape from the Holocaust because Britain didn't allow Jews to come to Palestine. Um,
Well, oh,
so they could have prevented like a lot of death
yeah,
there. Um, so a lot of the Zionists, like that's their when they're saying that, they're just what they're saying is like we want a land, we just don't, nobody likes us. That's kind of it. But I still don't believe in like that justification. I believe they should have a land. I don't care where, but it needs to be somewhere where they feel safe. But they also have to understand like who they're taking the land from. The occupation too, they didn't take by force; they took it a different way. Um, that could be debated too. Um, so that's the take on Zionism. I think that when you go to the extremes, I fucking hate it.
yeah,
But most rational people are like, we want a land. Yeah, we want a land somewhere where we could feel safer than what happened with in Europe.
yeah.
Um, the Nakba, what did she say about the like what was her experience with the Nakba? She left because I hear different accounts. Some of them just left and some of them were like forced out in 1948. What did she say?
Ugh, she's only 55. Like I don't even know. I didn't do the math. I think that she was like either born in after they left
Well, you
her
said
father.
second Nakba, so it's probably not in 1948 then. Yeah,
I feel like
maybe
yeah,
there was another war or something. Maybe I didn't hear about a second Nakba.
no, she said Nakba, so I feel like it was maybe her father who was a part, like who was there during, who moved like them.
Hmm.
Um, but I had just remembered that she had told me that um she like remember like recalls her dad's and her family's like story of just like having to leave because it wasn't safe anymore. Like she was just like, it wasn't safe for us to be in our home anymore. And so instead of staying there, like my family just like left before things got too bad. So I don't think it was a story of like her family being displaced and pushed out. It was very much like a fear thing. And like there's a lot of people who are leaving right now. Let's fucking go, like before it gets too bad. And I think that's how they made it safe and like good to Jordan. And then they kind of just stayed there until she went to America. But um, I don't know. And that was the other thing too. She was just like, she wasn't like, I'm not angry. Like I'm not angry that that's what happened. I'm just glad I'm safe. I'm angry now that my people are not safe. Like that my people, every day I wake up and I want to make sure that my uh niece and her new baby are okay. Like, she's just like angry about that. I don't think
Speaking
that they
about her reaction to everything, that's like a very peaceful reaction, which is good. A lot of times, sometimes it's not good because then you
yeah.
get abused. I'm gonna be like a little honest. Um, um, I'm Jewish and Ukrainian. If, for example, after what Germany did, if the Jews, like let's say they created a state right next to Germany and then they started killing German civilians, I would be in I would be in support of whatever Israel is doing now to that Jewish state. And I'm Ukrainian. If Ukraine attacked Russia first, if they just sent rockets into Russia, I would then whatever military response Russia would do, um, I think I would support it because there are people who are terrorizing you. My problem with the Ukraine thing is like Ukraine didn't send rockets into Russia. Russia just invaded,
Right.
which is obviously terrible. Um, but even if it happened the first time or second time, um, maybe like a massive attack killing civilians would be, well, not killing civilians. A massive attack would be too much. It's like, why the hell did you bomb us? But usually, what you see is like decades of tension or decades of tension between Ukraine and Russia, and Ukraine decided to side with the United States. That's a whole different thing. I was talking about like hypotheticals,
Mm.
and that's what any country would do if they're attacked. Unfortunately, and it's again, I'm not justifying what Israel is doing. I just, if they're saying that they're going to keep attacking Israel, they will, and civilians are dying, but it's also a little confusing to me why they're purposely not telling you the combatant death numbers. They're doing it on purpose. The leftist media, they're doing it on purpose. They don't want you to know how many combatants are getting killed because they only want you to look at the civilians. They only want you to hate Israel, and they're doing it on purpose. And I like to look at reality.
Mhm.
So they want you to be hateful. And yeah, not you, but like some of the other two guys that I talked to, they didn't know about some of the numbers. They were confused. They were like civilians, civilians, and I asked them that question. They're like, "Oh shit!" Like, um, it doesn't mean that civilians aren't dying, but Israel said, "Leave the north, go to the south." Yes, people won't be able to leave. A lot of them won't. There were reports that Hamas didn't allow some of the civilians to leave on purpose so that they could die for their land. Um, no, Gaza, Hamas would never do that with the Israelis. They would never say, "Hey, we're about to bomb this military target. All civilians leave,"
And I remember you bringing that up, like about like the warnings, and things that
which is not
is
perfect. It's not perfect.
right,
You're right about that.
right, and it's not. I don't know. I think that there's an interesting perspective too with a lot of um like other Palestinian voices that I've heard, like especially when looking at the more radicalized people, because I would say that I'm a very empathetic like person and I want to hear different perspectives, but there are even some people that are on my side that I'm kind of like, um that there's this is too extreme. Like you're leading with hate now, you
Those are the
know?
people I want to talk to. I need to talk to people like that. Like
I can totally introduce you to some people that are way more like that are main organizers and that would be open to talking to you if you are still looking for contacts. So if you are, just let me know because I have like personal contacts who
would they actually
um
be open?
they would 100% be open to speaking with you, especially if it's paid. Um
Hmm.
I have a lot of close like comrades who do organizing. I am really busy and I work with kids. I keep the kids safe. That's my priority. So I don't really do too much that is gonna put like my life or the people in it in like danger. But I have some friends who like live and die for resistance. So there are definitely some people that I could ask if they would be interested in speaking to you and I can connect you because you could definitely have a lot like I know that you haven't been able to like really shift my mind or perspective or anything, but I feel like we have very peaceful conversation. I have very radical friends who would, have a lot of different things to say, who maybe do support like who maybe would say the October 7th is justifiable, for example. Like there are some people
I
who,
think it's more difficult to change your mind because you're more there's like less hate with you and more of like
yeah,
yeah, more of like I just want to end the suffering. So it's like you're not really wrong about anything. You're not really wrong about anything. So I think that's one thing.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, if you that would be very nice if you could make that contact happen. It
yeah.
would, because yeah, it would make me really happy. There's something wrong
I
with me.
would, okay, yeah, I mean, for sure. I would definitely, there are some people I won't say that they would be nice, but
Oh,
they
that's
would
fine. I'm
be
trained
good.
in that. So it's okay.
Okay. But yeah, so with what I'm saying, like I speak to a lot of people and there are a lot of people who are like, there's 70 plus years of oppression and occupation. Like, why would resistance not happen? Why would violence not happen? Like,
this,
It's
if
not
they're
70 plus years, but so this is also where they trick you. It's like it's not 75, it's like 55. They forget, they purposefully leave out the 20 years that Egypt and Jordan occupied the West Bank and Gaza. They do it on purpose
mm,
because it's like if minorities kill minorities, again, nobody cares. They do it on purpose.
that's such an that is definitely the most interesting thing that you said to me today that kind of stuck with me because I never even really thought about that. Like I never thought about like these other conflicts that you brought up. I was like, oh, I don't know about that. And that's so true because um my big thing is like, oh, fucking white colonialism just doing its thing, but you're like, wait, no, there's more to it. And I'm like, true. And I didn't think about it like that. So that's very like interesting for sure. But I think that a lot of people who live with hate now live with the hopelessness and live with like, okay, we're gonna die anyways, we're going to lose anyways. Why would we not like burn whatever we can down with us if we're going down? And that I feel like is a really extreme and like sad and like very hopeless kind of way to go about it, which is why I think that this with like conversation based and like trying to do like solution making for peace is important. But there is also a lot of people who are like at their like, you know, their peak kind of like, fuck it, I'm angry, like this is what it is. So yeah, I think that it's kind of scary to see what way things will go, especially with the response going on right now. Um, it's definitely important to keep talking about, I think.
Based on all of this, there will be 7 minutes left of like the 30 minutes.
Mhm.
I definitely know you're getting tired, but based on all of this, like with everything that you're thinking, how if you were the arbiter of peace, what would you do? I
Oh
know, like
God.
I think I've asked you this before, but like I like to see how people's like where people's brains go when that question is asked. It's not about finding solutions, more like thinking it through.
Like when I think about this, it makes me feel hopeless because like the things that I would bring up, I know it won't work. Like because when you ask me what how could I just make peace? Like I sadly think that there's too much fucking power in the wrong hands. I think that the people are the only way that there will be peace, but the route people are taking is resistance in a violent way because like I was saying last time, they feel like there's no other choice but violence. But that is the complete opposite of peace to me. Like for me, when I think about peace right now, it is what you said. Israel just fucking stop for a second. And then it's okay, wait, there's still violence going on here. There's not just one perpetrator. Like there's still something going on. Let's fucking stop that too. Why are we like just stop? Like the violence, the war, like that to me is like what strips any of us from achieving any peace because there's no humanity left. Like it's complete dehumanization when there's war. Like people don't fucking care. Like I see Israeli soldiers, videos of them shooting the rockets and like just having just
They care more than you think. I'm gonna tell you the Israeli, like if you meet Israeli soldiers, they're gonna show you the clips of like the radical ones who maybe after October 7th say really stupid shit. But like if you accidentally kill, there was like a case where they're like, have you been killing Palestinians? And they're like, yeah, the one guy I knew accidentally killed one because he was trying to shoot a terrorist, and the bullet went through and killed a kid. And then they put that guy in jail for accidentally killing a kid. Like in Gaza, that person would be celebrated. In fact, when they brought the woman back that they kidnapped, that they raped, and they paraded her around like the cities, and all the men were in the streets cheering for that. If you did that in New York City, like the cops would be there beating the shit out of you, or the regular civilians would be like, "What the fuck are you guys doing?" They would beat the shit out of them. But in there, it's like praised to do something
Right.
like that.
But then there's also like the Israeli soldiers that do interviews. It's like, oh my God, I want to kill all the babies. Like I just go and look and find all the like,
Yeah.
it's just
It's screwed up. I haven't seen those interviews, and I will be the first person to say like lock that person up. But I haven't seen that come into manifestation from like individuals like seeking out babies, or the military seeking out babies to kill. I haven't seen that manifestation. Those people who say that, they had to be kicked out of the like,
I
and maybe
know,
even prosecuted.
and it's awful because there's these really bad people on both sides. Like there is people who want to pursue genocide, and I bet that there is a lot of people a part of Palestine who like really do want to promote for a ceasefire and then maybe do some other fucked up violent shit. Like there's a lot of fucked up people, and that's what I'm saying, that the power's in the wrong hands. Like I just wish the power was among the people, among the children, among like the families, that among not
From
terrorists
votes, oh no,
from both sides.
no, I'm s- I'm sorry. I don't know if you see it, but the Palestinian people, enough of them want dead Israeli civilians. More from the data that I saw, from the interviews that I saw, I could be wrong. Enough of them want it, and if you give it to the people, you're going to get exactly what you have. It's the minority of the Palestinians who want two-state solution or
So
peace.
then what does that mean then? That they're just gonna, okay, there's the potential that if Palestinians get peace again, they're just gonna kill all of us, so we might as well just kill all of them. Like, is that the mindset?
Well, there was never peace. It's not the mindset. It's when the Palestinians decide that terrorism is not the answer in peace is, um, even if it means kicking out the Israelis, doing it through peace, because doing it through resistance has not worked. It worked with the getting the Israelis out of Gaza, and then they keep getting killed because they keep continuing. That portion of land was not enough, and if you want to take back all the land, you will have to sacrifice so many of your civilians to do that. And the problem is, a lot of them are okay with that. A lot of them are okay with the sacrificing their kids. Um, the parents literally okay with their kids dying to take back the land. Um, and with that mindset, um, I don't know. Like if somebody just wanted to kill all Puerto Ricans, and they said that they would, and they continue to bomb you, it wouldn't. And then you're like, and people told you that like, no, you're supposed to seek peace. You're supposed to stop bombing the people who are bombing you. You'd be like, what? Like, are you serious?
I mean, it's true, but I think it would have to be the other way. Like, I feel like, you know, if it was America, for example, and a bunch of Puerto Ricans were like, the Puerto Ricans won't stop bombing unless like you stop, right?
Israel stopped.
Right.
I'm just saying,
And
Israel
then
stopped.
they did, but now it's back
Yes.
and it's expanding to other borders and people, and they're making a lot of people really upset. Um,
But
so I
why?
don't.
But why can't? But what's wrong with saying that? Like, okay, yeah.
Well, you can
But
finish your last thought.
what's wrong with saying that? No, you said Hamas is wrong, but you're continuing to focus on Israel's response. If it, so if Israel does nothing, then if they do exactly what you want them to do, Gaza's going to keep bombing them, and then we're going to be back here again. And I haven't heard you say anywhere that we need to re-educate the people in Gaza. I haven't heard you say that yet.
Well, like,
Mm.
I
made
had
an
a
excellent
point.
point. You changed my
I
mind about
had a
everything.
point. I actually had a point. But so like I would fuck, wait. Like I was saying with okay, yeah. Like I was saying, um, when you were saying if I was like the end all infiltrator for peace. For to I don't know, like for me, if Israel were to stop,
Which they did. Continue.
which they did, if they were to do so again, to just see where the fuck we could find peace. And there's still, like I said, there's another perpetrator, which there is.
Okay.
We could see the root of that. Like they would have the bombings that could come from Gaza or anywhere else that are Hamas led. They have a base, like there could be things done there to
The
see, but
bases are in the schools and hospitals.
which is also proven to have not been true with
Yeah, but
Al-Qaeda,
it's
you know?
but no. There is no evidence that they did not do that. There's evidence that maybe in some like one hospital that they were 100% sure of they're in there. That was not maybe that was disproven, but in schools it's 100% proven that they're using them, and in some hospitals, yes, it's absolutely proven.
Well,
But they use human shields. Why would that be beyond them? They use human shields. Like it's well documented by everybody. It's just the difference is the different justification for the human shield. It's like we have no choice. This is our only way of resistance. It's not say like I'm not justifying the bombings. I'm just giving the reality. That's it.
right. I just think that on the same page of what you're saying with Israel scared so they're not going to stop bombing. Israel's a way bigger power than Palestine. Palestine is way more scared. They're way more displaced. They're way more martyred and killed. They're not going to stop because that's all they have. You
But
know,
if
they
they're not
can't.
gonna stop, if we don't find a way to convince the Palestinian people that trying to murder the Jews is not a good idea, then the Jews will defend themselves the same way any other country would. I'm not saying that it's just like if you had family in a different country and some country vowed to destroy them, you like I don't know. Okay, wait. Okay, all right. If you were to say both things, this is already the seventh ceasefire,
Mhm.
seventh or eighth ceasefire. They've had multiple peace agreements that did not go through. Why have they not gone through? Why haven't the peace happened? I think that's the most important thing. Why has everything that you've said to do, why has that never worked? I guess that's a good question. That's a good question.
Why has it never worked? I think, like I said, like the power is in the wrong hands. And I feel like people are so much in their, maybe not always extreme, but in their point of view that they're stuck and they don't want to switch. They don't want to see what's on the
But
other
who's
side.
they? I'm just curious, who's they?
I mean, honestly, both ends, if you think about it, because this conflict is it's happening. And even when there's like ceasefire, there's still no peace. Like there is no shift in either purpose. Like it's all just trying to survive each
What
other.
do you think about this idea? If
What?
ceasefire, you get exactly what you want, a ceasefire. Because every time Israel does these strikes, everybody always says ceasefire. We do a ceasefire, right? But the second another rocket launches from Gaza, they go back to doing exactly what they're doing. What do you think about that?
Like I couldn't sit here and tell you that that's not valid because, of course, you gave it an opportunity, and there's still continuous violence, and it's like, okay, fuck, why are we gonna put our guard down? Like we will continue. I just I feel like there's no one who's gonna sit here and tell us what's gonna happen and what's gonna fix it. And like there's no
Because then we appease the people who want Israel to stop, and then if Gaza starts again, we know it's their fault.
Right. I think that it's sadly is a waiting game, and like I think that there is a lot of death, and I think that with the way the world works, like we're not going to figure out a way to end this unless there's more death. There's always death. That death is always how it comes to, because violence is always the thing. I don't know what other. All I know is it cannot continue like this, and that there are other countries who are telling and calling
But that stuff
Israel,
is not happening to them. It's not happening to them because if it happened to them, they would do the same exact thing.
and that maybe that's true. I just don't. I'm unsure, like where
Let's
else
say
it could.
Israel stops. What change would Gaza and Palestine have to make to get Israel to stop bombing them?
The only thing that I think of is if all of them are displaced. When all of them are gone and nobody's in Gaza
No,
anymore.
no, why? Why?
I don't know. That's the only way I can think about them
Because
stopping,
they're
because that's what they
they just
want.
have no. Israel just wants wait, only to displace the Israelis or the
No, to only when like all the Palestinians are displaced, then they'll stop.
no, no. Israel will stop when the bombing, when like there was a ceasefire. Israel does not want because the leftists have enough power there. They don't want Gaza or occupy it. They don't want to occupy more. They just want peace. If the that's not a change. They don't want all the Muslim people of Gaza to leave. They don't want. I'm telling you, I'm 100% certain of this that the majority of the people of Israel do not want all the people in Gaza to just leave so they can get the land. They don't
But
want
so then
that.
that's the thing. Why are they bombing? They're bombing them to leave or to die.
No, they're bombing them because Gaza bombed them. That's it. There was the 2 years of peace. Gaza bombed them, and they're bombing them back. And they kept bombing all those bombing runs that you saw while they were bombing them. Instead of the Hamas being like, okay, maybe we should stop bombing them because they're killing our civilians. No, they kept sending more rockets instead of stopping. Israel just wants them to stop. They don't care about the land. I'm telling you. I don't know why you think that they want the land. And I don't know why you think that they just want to kill civilians. I don't know where you got this from. I really don't. But they don't want that. They just
If they
want the
don't want
bombings.
that, I feel like they would need to say that. Like they are killing with no statements on like this is like the soul, like we're here for Hamas, we're here for Hamas, we're here for Hamas. That's what we want. We don't want terrorism.
I'm telling you this right now, and they've said it before. Now, they yeah, we're doing this for Hamas. They've said it. They've said it before. Now that it's a war, it's about killing Hamas. And civilians will unfortunately die, but you don't know the amount of combatants that are dead. You don't know.
Mhm.
You don't know. And you
All
don't
I all I know is that I'm seeing displaced and martyred Palestinians, that Israel is even speaking to like the bordering countries about letting the Palestinians in to go to them to be
no,
displaced.
nobody wants Palestinians. They cause terrorism in every country they go to in the Middle East. Nobody wants the Palestinians.
Well, Israel's trying to displace them outside of it, so I don't know what their intention is with that.
They're they're okay. They need a community. Okay, let's say they are. Let's say they are. Or they're not trying to displace them. They're trying to get rid of Hamas and they're telling you to go, they're trying to tell them to leave so you don't get. They told them to go to the south, right? Um again, the perp maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. What I do know, like I'm 100% sure is that if Hamas didn't send the rockets, Israel would not be doing this. If they wanted the land, they would have done what Hamas did. If they wanted the land, they would have done
Okay.
what Hamas did.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with what you're saying there. I don't think it's about land either. I don't think Israel cares about Gaza and West Bank's lands. Like I don't think it's that. I think that it's some sort of I think it's darker. I think You know, I think I see it as a genocide. A lot of people see it as a genocide, and it's a genocide with intention. And that's, I don't
But
think my mind can be
but
changed about that, despite the fact that, yes, they're getting terrorist numbers of deaths rising, like they're getting people a part of Hamas. There's still 30,000 plus people,
but
Palestinians, that
if you
are.
see what Israel is doing as a genocide, and we can't agree on what a genocide is, then only more violence could happen. Only more violence could happen if you see that what Israel is doing is a genocide and not what Hamas wants to do or what Palestine wants to do to the Israelis. If you only see what Israel is doing as a genocide, where
But if you don't see that Israel's doing really a lot of harm and you continue to
they're doing
support them, then
harm,
that's also perpetrating more
they're
violence.
they're doing a lot of harm, but what you're advocating for is worse for the Palestinians. You're advocating for exactly what created October 7th. That's
But at
what
the
you're
same
advocating.
time, I'm not here saying that, yes, like what Hamas is doing. I'm just over here saying that Palestinians are will not survive this at this rate, and that Israel needs to stop. That's how I feel, and there's more to it. Of course, there's a lot that Palestinians have to do too, but that's my and the overall feeling that we are losing Palestinian brothers and sisters every single day at a rate that's insane, and we will lose all of them if Israel doesn't stop soon. And that's how a lot of us feel.
But if that's the way you feel, then you're not advocating, but do you see how what you feel is dangerous?
I understand how.
More dangerous than what Israel is doing now.
I don't know if I agree with that because, like I said, at this point,
But you haven't said anything about changing the viewpoint of the way the Palestinians feel about Israel.
we can't change the viewpoint about the Palestinians' feelings if they're being murdered every day. Like, how are we
Well,
supposed
even
to
when they
educate them if
weren't,
they're dying?
even when they weren't,
But
nobody
that's the
was
past.
saying.
This is now. Like, what to do now? We can't just put a projector and educate Palestinians. They're like dying, you know, like there's no Palestinians left to educate. Like, they're going to die. And that's the problem. Like, there can't be any change because there's only murder right now.
Okay, so there's only murder. Okay,
You know, like, how are we supposed to educate people if they're all being pushed out of their homes, displaced, starving, and being murdered? Education is not survival, is what's important to them. And then violence is important to others of them too, who are also just scared. So they also want to perpetrate violence. But no change can be done right now because Palestinians don't even have homes anymore. Like they're losing everything. I don't know what else could be done right now.
and then okay, and but none of it is working. Like the ceasefires have never worked, and you just want more. I don't understand why you want more of what doesn't work. I don't understand that. And
We just
the ceasefire was for exactly for what you're saying. How it just like we just stop the violence. Just stop it. Just stop the violence so then we could think about solutions. Every
mhm.
single ceasefire has been because of that. Every single ceasefire has not worked, and you want the same exact thing that hasn't worked. But that's
I
your
mean,
stance.
what other option is there than a ceasefire?
What we're doing, talking, that's the other option. Nobody does this.
It's true, but like, what do you think the next step should be if it's not Israel having a ceasefire? It's Hamas having a ceasefire while they're being bombed? It's the same thing that you're saying. Why are you gonna stop bombing someone who's bombing you?
The ceasefires, both sides have to adhere to it. Hamas doesn't adhere to ceasefires. So Hamas will be destroyed because they can. I want a ceasefire too. I just want Hamas to pay attention to it, and they've never listened to it ever, ever, ever. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. You're advocating for something that they just don't listen to. It's not Israel's fault that there's no ceasefire. They've initiated 7 of them. It's not Israel's fault that there is no ceasefire. It's Hamas's fault because they break it every single time, whether it's in 5 minutes or in 2 years. They break it every single time. And if we do exactly what you're saying, then it's going to be 1 minute and then 30 seconds of a ceasefire. They're doing all of this because they know people like you with a big heart are going to say, we want stop funding the Israeli military and we want the Arab states to destroy Israel. They're doing it, manipulating you. They're doing that on purpose. They want more of their civilians to die so you could get angry.
And, at the end of the day, maybe you guys using like this rationality and the realism, maybe you're right. But at this point, there's so much pain and loss that this fight, that's not like a physical fight, but this fight that I feel like this fight that you won't make me stutter or change my mind, like it's building, and all the like they're not gonna let up. Like they will die
And I
for the
don't want them to
cause.
die. I don't want them to die for the cause. I don't want them to
And
die. I don't
that
want the kids to die for the cause. I don't want the
I know,
adults to die.
but they
I don't want
are,
the I don't want
you
the
know.
terrorists to die for the cause. I want them to have peaceful, loving lives.
And I agree, but it fucking sucks because they will, and we are, and it's I don't know what else, but it's hard to be hopeful and it's hard to not suffer. But like then I hear what kids are saying, and they're like, no, like I'll see like little interviews of like these young Palestinian girls, like, oh no, like this is Allah's plan, and like this is my land, and if he wants me to die here, that's what I'm going to do, and like I'm just going to, as long as I'm with my mom and my dad, like I'm okay. Like it's just that, like, fuck, you know what I mean? Like there's just suffering, and it fucking sucks.
They didn't have to suffer.
Yeah, but
They
they
didn't.
are, they are now.
I don't.
It just sucks. It
No,
really sucks.
they have the choice. I think they have the choice of not terrorizing. That's my opinion, and your opinion is they have no choice but to continue to resist. But
Yeah.
because of the okay, all right. Well, and I guess there will be war. I guess if I guess unfortunately. Thank you for the conversation, Tori. I think that at least you're persistent. That's very good.
I'm passionate. I have, like I said, that it's this communal fight of like all of our oppression that we're putting together, and we're all just trying to stand together, I think. And maybe we don't fully understand because humans are not supposed to fucking kill each other, like we're not supposed to be in wars about land or religion or things like it. It's fucked up, so I think we're all just doing our best. But thank you for speaking and for trying to continue to promote peace and speak about peace. I think that what you're doing is probably really frustrating, but you're definitely doing good work, and don't stop. I'm not gonna stop. You don't stop,
I don't
like,
want you
and
to stop. I don't want you to stop either.
we're not gonna stop. We're gonna both keep doing what we're doing, and you're gonna keep speaking to people, and everything that we say, it's gonna influence, or like not influence, but it's gonna leave a mark, and little by little, hopefully we'll get to a world where war is not the only option. But so yeah, thank you for the conversation and for wanting to meet with me again.